Regime change around the world is not a new phenomenon, yet it has been observed throughout history. The race of superpowers between Russia and the US in recent times has caused different administrative changes in the world. The US diplomatic moves have been popular in this regard since the 19th century, and according to the studies, there were 64 covert and 6 regime change attempts made by the US during the Cold War. In the modern age, the US policies are famous for conducting regime change operations with and without military intervention. In the most recent times, Pakistan became the prey of a regime change operation on April 10, 2022. Till the dissolution of the National Assembly on August 9, 2023, the US refused the intervention. But soon on the night of the Pakistani National Assembly dissolution, the US announced its intervention and confirmed interventions in Pakistani regime change on April 10, 2022. Let's first understand the incident and then move forward. News had been circulating about the receipt of a cipher by a foreign office from the US, consisting of the diplomatic discussion between Foreign Ambassador of Pakistan, Asad Majid Khan, and State Department officials, including Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu. The online American news website The Intercept launched a secret cipher soon after the dissolution of the National Assembly of Pakistan on August 9, 2023. This diplomatic cipher was sent to the Pakistani Foreign Office on March 7, 2022. Soon after this, the regime change operation was started in Pakistan with the help of the no-confidence motion against Pakistan's elected Prime Minister Imran Khan. All the opposition parties, including Pakistan Muslim League Noon, Pakistan People's Party, Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam, Mujahida Qawmi Movement, started making alliances and recognized themselves as PDM, Pakistan Democratic Movement, and these have been rivals to each other in the past. Prime Minister Imran Khan came to know about the cipher and started asking the National Security Council to take action, but he became helpless, and on April 10, 2022, Mr. Khan was removed from the chair of Prime Minister. Throughout the tenure of the ruling PDM, they rejected the narrative of cipher and foreign intervention in the country, and even army officials share the same narrative. On the other hand, Prime Minister Imran Khan started conferences and appeals in court and started approaching international media, but all in vain. Imran Khan is not the only one. Formerly Saddam Hussein in Iraq, Umar al-Bashir in Sudan, and Mullah Umar, as well as many other Asian and African state rulers, had been preyed on by regime-changing operations by the US. In Iran in 1953, Guatemala in 1954, Chile in 1973, Afghanistan in 2001, Iraq in 2003, Egypt in 2012, Libya in 2011, Syria in 2011, Ukraine in 2014, and in recent times in Pakistan on April 10th, regime was changed by the US. The Saddam Hussein regime was changed in Iraq in 2003 through a direct invasion by the US. The allegation was chemical weapons, but the reality was to capture the oil sources. Aside from that, Saddam Hussein was a great threat to US proxies in the Gulf. The wounds of the Vietnam War were still green for the US against Saddam Hussein, and he was changed. Muammar Gaddafi was punished in 2011 for launching gold currency and was going to make an African bloc. The US felt that these moves could result in de-dollarization around the world, so Gaddafi was punished by rivals. A well-established regime was demised in Libya, and still it had not set up its infrastructure. Shah Faisal was changed by the CIA's mission and plan. The proxy of the Islamic Bank, use of oil as a weapon against the West, and the Islamic Army establishment were demolished too. Let's explore the reasons for the regime change operations launched by the USA around the world. What were the main tenets of the cipher? Why the US intends to undertake regime change operations around the world? Which agenda and narrative are set by the US in regime changing operations? What type of message is the US intending to convey to the rest of the world? After the succession of regime change operations, why has the US newspaper released a secret cipher? The main tenets of the cipher, which were very threatening for Pakistan, as stated by Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs Donald Lu are as follows in short. The Pakistani Prime Minister would not visit Moscow due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Prime Minister Imran Khan showed aggressive neutrality in the Russia-Ukraine war, which is not acceptable for the US State Department. It looks like all Pakistanis have the same view as the Prime Minister. It was a shock for the US foreign policy, so the vote of no confidence should be successful. And the mistake, which is aggressive neutrality in the Russia-Ukraine war and ignoring European and UN perspectives, will be forgiven. The US kept in mind the visits of supported and sponsored countries, and it was observed that the Prime Minister Imran Khan tried to meet with Russian President Putin during the Beijing Olympics but was not successful. The US does not consider Russia a party to the Afghan issue, so Pakistan wouldn't give importance to Russia in the case of Afghanistan. And at the end, according to expectations, all of a sudden the political situation in Pakistan totally changed. All these points elaborate the fact that US wanted to punish Pakistani Prime Minister due to his aggressive statements against European and US stances. It can also be extracted that the US considers developing countries to be owned by sponsored states. Muhammad Najim Mirza and Aisha Nayeb wrote about the US regime-changing policy and mentioned that the US wants to install friendly regimes in all those countries where its interests are rooted. This has been observed in Panama, Honduras, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Iran, the Philippines, Afghanistan, and in recent times in Pakistan on April 10, 2022. The objectives behind changing regimes in other countries by the US are to exercise power, impose ideology, maintain dominance, access natural sources, counter threats to trade routes, and support free movement. Sullivan in 2004 expressed the strategies of the US for regime change as assassinations, election tampering, invasions, military coups, and gaining political motives by giving aid. These themes and strategies help the US to launch its missions in any country. Let's move to the next query about what type of narrative and agenda are being set by the US for regime change. Sullivan expressed that the US used freedom agenda and liberal values plantations so that the sympathies of marginalized people, domestic issues, and leftist parties could be gained in the operational country. The phenomena is clear. The US is intended to expand its operational setups, its ideology, and its interest in global searches. Ben Dennison wrote in 2020 that the US tried many times to change the regimes of many countries by military force, but it produced side effects. These operations were conducted in Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan. Lindsay A. Rourke has explored that covert regime change operations by the US are America's secret Cold War, and the message is conveyed to be an ally of it. The key narrative is constructed as democratic value development and a self-oriented line of friendship by the US for the countries where regime change operations are launched. The US-oriented truth is told to the affected countries that the US has ties with Russia to expand the global order, so don't be party to others. Now the big question is, after the success of the regime change operation in Pakistan, why has the US newspaper released a secret cipher? The Intercept released a complete discussion and pointed out the situation. The US State Department affirmed the discussion inlaid in the cipher between the US and Pakistani foreign officials. It describes how the US wants to convey the message that Pakistan is apparently an atomic power, but has a weaker structure of politics and administration. As the war of Ukraine is not the war between Russia and Ukraine, yet it is the war between Russia and the US. Neutrality and aggressive neutrality are not acceptable by the US. Therefore, the regime change operation was undertaken. The Intercept also wrote that the copy of Cipher is delivered by army officials to release, not by any other affiliated person. It appears that the US attempted to confront Prime Minister Imran Khan and his 75% support from the Pakistani public in opposition to the army. This plan of leaking Cipher copy on the day of dissolution of the National Assembly showed that the expected results of the civil conflict could not be achieved after regime change, so the US tried to gain the results at the end of the assembly tenure. But it proved that what the US demands in Pakistan, like those in sponsored and weakly structured countries, these countries have to complete the directions at every cost, and they have to pay the price in the form of rivalry and rebellion in the country. The results are civil wars inside the countries, conflict wars with neighbors, or direct confrontation with the US. This move by the US in Pakistan Pakistan couldn't succeed in producing rebellion or rivals in Pakistan, but the Pakistani economy was fully destroyed. GDP fell from 6% to 0.6%. The mistrust of investors, the public, and the stoppage of foreign direct investment vanished from the market. Price increases made people suffer. The trust of the public in the army became a story because the public thought that the army could stop intervention, but they didn't. As many Pakistani officials and politicians have assets in Western banks, investment, and properties, so they are unable to stand against US intervention. Secondly, many retired officials also try to secure their future and their children's future in Western countries and the US, so they don't have the courage to resist US policies. By affirming the regime change in Cipher, the US proved the cowardly position of Pakistan in front of the US and gave the message that the US had superiority and had direct agents in the institution of other countries.